Key West, Florida, a place known for pastel houses, palm-lined streets, warm ocean breezes, and sunsets. So beautiful, people literally stop what they're doing just to watch the sky change colors. It's a place of laid-back island living. Live music drifting out of open bars, artists on every corner, and history that runs deeper than most people ever realize. This tiny island has been home to pirates, shipwreck salvagers, Civil War soldiers, writers, smugglers, and some of the wealthiest families in early Florida history. People came here chasing fortunes, freedom, and sometimes running from their past. But what they don't tell you is Key West also became a place where people suffered, where tragedies piled up quietly, and where some souls never really left. Behind the conch houses, behind the smiling tourists and beachside bars, there's another side of this island. A darker side, a side filled with haunted mansions, restless spirits, shadow figures, and voices that still echo through empty hallways after midnight. Tonight, we're stepping past the postcard version of Key West and into the part they don't put on brochures. Welcome to Key West is hiding something. Key West Cemetery opened in 1847 after a massive hurricane in 1846 basically picked up the old burial ground and scattered bodies like it was playing ghostly dodgeball. Locals decided, maybe we should move this cemetery somewhere that doesn't float away. So they relocated it to higher ground, where it still sits today, baking under the Florida sun, full of crooked headstones, palm trees, and enough ghost energy to power a spirit Halloween warehouse. This cemetery is famous for having some of the sassiest tombstones in America. These people didn't just die, they left Yelp reviews about life. The most famous reads, "I told you I was sick," which is basically the original, "See, nobody listens to me." Another grave says, "Devoted fan of Julio Iglesias. Sir, even in death, you're still requesting Spanish love ballads. These ghosts absolutely still have opinions." One of the most haunted areas is the Child's Garden of Angels, where dozens of children are buried under white statues and tiny angel markers. Visitors report hearing children laughing, tiny footsteps, and feeling tugging on their clothes, which is adorable and terrifying at the same time. Imagine looking down and nobody's there, but you know something just tried to play tag with you. Then there's the story of Captain Tony, a legendary local character who is believed to still roam the grounds, usually smelling faintly of cigars and poor life choices. People claim they hear boots walking, deep coughing, and feel someone brushing past them even when the cemetery is empty. Basically, even death couldn't get him to stop haunting his own neighborhood. One of the strangest legends involves a woman in a long white dress seen floating between the graves at dusk. Tourists report she appears in photos but not in real life, like a ghost photobombing your vacation memories. You go home thinking you got a cute sunset pic and later realize you also captured Linda from the afterlife just checking your fit. Paranormal investigators say this place has high electromagnetic readings, sudden cold spots, whispering voices, and shadow figures that duck behind mausoleums. People swear they hear their names being called, which is deeply disrespectful when you're already nervous. Nothing ruins your vibe faster than a random whisper going, "Hey, you." The ghosts here are believed to be unusually active because Key West was once full of pirates, shipwreck survivors, yellow fever victims, and rum enthusiasts who lived life fast and died dramatically. Basically, these spirits didn't finish their business. They just finished the rum. Now they wander the cemetery like, where did I put my treasure? While side-eyeing tourists in flip-flops. So if you visit Key West Cemetery, remember, you're walking through nearly 200 years of sass, tragedy, ghost children, pirate energy, and people who were clearly dramatic even in death. Smile for your pictures, but don't be surprised if something smiles back. And definitely don't ignore a tombstone that says, "I told you I was sick," because that ghost is still mad about it. The Key West Firehouse Museum lives inside Old Firehouse Number 3 on Grinnell Street, a brick building that has been standing since 1907 and absolutely knows where all the bodies are buried. Metaphorically, probably. Back when it opened, it housed the Sunny South Engine Company and Tiger Hose Company Number 3, which already sounds like a boy band that only drops albums made of sirens and sweat. This was the nerve center for saving Key West from becoming a floating campfire. Back in the early 1900s, Key West was basically built out of dry wood, ocean wind, and questionable life choices, meaning one candle sneeze could turn into a 5-block emergency. Fires were common, fast, and dramatic, so firefighters here were busy, tired, and probably permanently smelling like smoke and coffee. The firehouse wasn't just a job site. It was a second home, a crash pad, and occasionally a place to argue over who forgot to refill the coffee pot. The station stayed active until 1998, meaning generations of firefighters lived, slept, and worked in the same rooms for nearly a century. Boots lined the floor, alarms rang at all hours, and the walls absorbed decades of stress, adrenaline, and stories that start with, "You're not going to believe this." When it finally closed, it didn't feel abandoned. It felt like everyone just stepped out for lunch and forgot to come back. Eventually, the building was restored and turned into the Firehouse Museum, packed with antique engines, helmets, call boxes, uniforms, and old bells that look like they've seen some things. Visitors come for history, but immediately realize they've walked into a place that feels watched. Not in a creepy, "you're in danger" way, more like a, "hey, you're sitting in my chair" way. And then there are the ghosts. Staff and visitors have reported footsteps in empty rooms, voices when no one is there, cold spots, and the classic, "something just brushed past me and I don't want to talk about it." There's even a friendly spirit nicknamed Frank, who reportedly hangs out in the men's restroom, casually appearing like a normal guy until you realize you're making eye contact with someone who does not, in fact, exist. Some people also claim to see a young girl in old-fashioned clothing in photos or mirrors, which is adorable until you realize she wasn't invited and doesn't show up on the guest list. Add in flickering lights, doors opening on their own, and objects moving when no one's touching them, and suddenly you're walking through the museum like you're trying not to offend anyone who might still work there, spiritually. Part of the haunting lore ties back to legendary fire chiefs and the emotional weight of a place where people fought disasters, lost friends, and lived on constant alert. This wasn't an office. It was a stress factory with sirens. When you pack that much emotion into one building for almost 100 years, it's basically a paranormal pressure cooker. So today, the Key West Firehouse Museum is equal parts history lesson and low-budget ghost tour. You come to learn about firefighting and leave wondering why you kept hearing footsteps behind you when nobody was there. It's the only museum where you might accidentally apologize out loud, just in case someone invisible is still on duty. The Porter Mansion, also called the Dr. Joseph Y. Porter House, sits at 429 Caroline Street in Old Town Key West, looking like the kind of building that already knows your secrets. The original home dates back to the late 1830s and was later expanded into the tall, fancy, 3-story Victorian beauty people recognize today. With its ornate trim, dramatic roofline, and "I've seen things" expression, it doesn't even try to pretend it's normal. The house is best known for Dr. Joseph Yates Porter, Jr., who was literally born in the mansion in 1847 and later died there too, because apparently he liked his commute short. He became Key West's first native-born physician and went on to be Florida's first state health officer, fighting yellow fever outbreaks and trying to keep the island from turning into a germ-themed horror movie. If Key West was chaos, Dr. Porter was the man with the disinfectant. Architecturally, the mansion is a stylish mix of Bahamian, New England, and French influences. It started as a 2-story home and later gained a 3rd floor, plus all those decorative details that make it look like it should come with its own dramatic background music. Basically, this house knows it's pretty and expects you to notice. Now for the spooky part, because no Key West landmark gets to stay unhaunted. The haunting rumors come from the house's age, the intense medical history, and generations of people living and dying within the same walls. Add candlelight, island humidity, and creaky wood, and suddenly every noise sounds like it's about to whisper your name. The most famous ghost is believed to be Dr. Porter himself, who allegedly never fully checked out of his shift. Visitors have reported seeing a man in old-fashioned clothing, hearing unexplained footsteps, and feeling like someone is standing right behind them even when nobody is there. You know that turn around real quick feeling? Yeah, that. Then there are the poltergeist-style stories. People claim coins appear out of nowhere, small objects get moved, and sometimes music plays in empty rooms. There's even talk of wine glasses tipping over on their own, because apparently even the ghosts in Key West enjoy being dramatic and slightly unhinged. Some versions of the legend say there are multiple spirits hanging around, not just Dr. Porter. Cold spots, doors opening by themselves, and sudden strange feelings are all part of the mansion's paranormal highlight reel. It's the kind of place where someone will say nothing's happening, and the house immediately takes that personally. Today, the Porter Mansion sits proudly in Old Town as both a historic landmark and a full-time rumor magnet. People come for the architecture, the history, and maybe to feel lightly judged by a ghost doctor who definitely does not approve of your life choices, your phone addiction, or your lack of vitamin D. If you walk by at night, be respectful, because somewhere in there, Dr. Porter might still be on duty. Back in 1904 in Key West, Florida, a wealthy little boy named Robert Eugene Otto received what looked like an innocent sailor doll. It was almost his size, stitched in a little white naval uniform, and had real human hair, which is already an automatic red flag. The doll was made by a servant, and legend says she practiced Caribbean black magic. Whether that part is true or not, the moment she handed that doll over, the peaceful vibes in that house immediately packed their bags and moved out. Not long after, strange things began happening inside the Otto home. Furniture shifted on its own. Toys were mysteriously destroyed. Objects flew across rooms like they were late for work. When asked who was responsible, little Eugene would calmly say, "Robert did it." At first, his parents thought it was cute, until neighbors started seeing the doll moving from window to window, like he had a daily step goal. Eugene talked to Robert like he was a real person, but the weird part was that people in the house would hear 2 different voices coming from his bedroom. One was Eugene's, the other was not a child's voice at all. Even creepier, the doll would answer him. At that point, the house wasn't just haunted, it was hosting full conversations. Eugene eventually grew up, became an artist, got married, and moved back into the same house with Robert. Instead of putting the doll in storage like a normal adult, he gave Robert his own chair, dressed him in outfits, and treated him like family. This man had a wife, a career, and a haunted roommate. Visitors later claimed Robert would change facial expressions and move when no one was looking. Some swore they saw him standing instead of sitting. Others said they felt watched while he was in the room. Robert basically started acting like he paid rent, and at this point, he might as well have. When Eugene died in 1974, you would think Robert would finally be done haunting people. But when a new family moved into the house, their young daughter said the doll talked to her and moved on its own. Robert was once again blamed for creepy behavior and was promptly relocated to the attic. Eventually, Robert was donated to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West. Instead of being exorcised, he was placed behind glass and turned into a museum exhibit. Somehow, he went from attic goblin to museum royalty. Soon, visitors who mocked him or took photos without asking permission began reporting extremely bad luck. Car accidents, illnesses, job losses, relationship problems, and general life chaos. People started mailing apology letters to the museum addressed directly to Robert, begging him to stop ruining their lives. The museum literally has drawers full of "Dear Robert, I'm sorry" letters. Museum staff say Robert's position sometimes changes, cameras malfunction around him, and his expression seems to shift. And yes, he now has rules. You're supposed to ask permission before taking his picture. He is the only doll on Earth with museum manners. So how did it all end? It didn't. Robert still sits in his glass case in Key West, staring into people's souls, collecting apology letters like Pokemon cards, and proving that sometimes the real mistake was bringing that doll into the house in the first place. Eaton Street is basically the main artery of Old Town Key West, the place where pirates, presidents, smugglers, wreckers, ghosts, drunks, and confused tourists have all crossed paths and said, "Yeah, this feels about right." Back in the early 1800s, Eaton Street was carved out when Key West was still a dusty coral rock with delusions of grandeur. It was named after Commodore William Eaton, a naval officer who was clearly important enough to get a whole street, but not important enough for anyone to remember what he actually did without Googling him. From the jump, Eaton Street became one of the main routes through the island, meaning everyone who had business, secrets, money, or questionable intentions eventually ended up on it. By the mid-1800s, Eaton Street was popping. This was the golden age of wrecking, when ships would crash on the reef and locals would rescue the cargo in a way that was legally questionable, but spiritually very confident. Warehouses, taverns, and merchant shops lined Eaton, and if you walked down it at night, you'd hear the sound of rum bottles clinking, boots stomping, and someone in the distance yelling about missing barrels that were definitely already in somebody else's house. Eaton Street basically smelled like salt, sweat, tobacco, and don't ask where this came from. Now let's talk about the Curry Mansion area, because this is where Eaton Street starts acting real spooky. The mansion was built by Florida's first self-made millionaire, William Curry. And when a place is funded by a man who got rich during shipwreck chaos, you already know the vibes are off. Staff have reported lights flicking on and off, doors slamming, and footsteps when nobody's there. The most famous spirit is believed to be a former maid who passed away on the property and now apparently refuses to clock out. People say you'll smell perfume out of nowhere, and not a nice Chanel smell, but more like Victorian floral mixed with unfinished business. But Curry Mansion is not the only haunted diva on Eaton Street. Several old buildings along the Strip, especially former boarding houses and taverns, are known for shadow figures, disembodied footsteps, and the sensation that someone is standing directly behind you when no one is. Employees have reported being called by name by unseen voices, objects moving on their own, and the feeling of being watched so intensely you start apologizing out loud for stuff you did in 2007. One of the creepiest recurring sightings is what locals call the blue light walker. Late at night, people have reported seeing a faint blue glow moving slowly along Eaton Street, like someone carrying a lantern that doesn't belong to a person anymore. The light fades, reappears, and sometimes passes straight through walls, which is a pretty strong sign that OSHA does not cover this employee. Some believe it's the spirit of a sailor who never made it home after a wrecking run. Then there are the phantom footsteps, and not the polite little tap-tap. No, these are heavy, purposeful boots walking up behind you like someone is about to ask for directions and your wallet at the same time. People turn around, and there's nobody there, just vibes, humidity, and regret. It happens so often that some locals don't even react anymore. They'll just pause, sigh, and keep walking like, oh, it's you again. Tour guides swear Eaton Street also hosts a handful of residual hauntings, meaning ghosts on a loop. So you might hear laughing, arguing, bottles clinking, or even old-timey music drifting through the air. But there's no source. It's basically Key West's ghostly Spotify playlist, stuck on shuffle since 1864. So if you're strolling Eaton Street at night and suddenly smell perfume, feel watched, hear boots, or see a mysterious blue glow floating past the bars, don't panic. Just remember, you're walking on a street built by pirates, wreckers, and millionaires with secrets. The ghosts aren't trying to hurt you. They're just checking to see if you brought rum. Before Captain Tony's became the rum-soaked circus it is today, it was literally a morgue. Not kind of, not used to be creepy, but an actual full-blown dead-body-holding morgue in the 1800s. The original building was used to store bodies during Key West's worst yellow fever outbreaks. So yes, people were stacked up in there like firewood, which explains why even now, the vibe inside feels like someone forgot to let the souls know the party started, and they're still waiting to be checked out. Then the building said, you know what would really spice this up? And became the county's hanging grounds. That's right. Public executions happened here. Folks would gather outside to watch hangings like it was a Saturday matinee. Today, people gather inside to watch karaoke. Same screams, different reasons. Fast forward to the Prohibition era and boom, it becomes a speakeasy. Bootleggers, gamblers, drunks, and general Florida chaos filled the place. Then Captain Tony Tarachino bought it in the 1970s and said, let's lean into the madness, and turned it into the wild, slightly lawless, world-famous saloon we know today. Ernest Hemingway himself drank here, which means half the spirits might just be writers who died mad they never finished their books. One of the most famous ghosts is Sloppy Joe Russell. Yes, that's Sloppy Joe. Employees say glasses slide across the bar by themselves, lights flicker, and there's often the feeling of someone leaning over your shoulder reading your text messages like, who you texting at my bar? You'll feel watched. Not by security, but by someone who died in 1910 and is still judging your drink choice. Then there's the lady in blue. She's been seen drifting through the ladies' room, which is already emotionally unstable enough without ghost activity. Women report cold breezes, mirrors fogging, and faucets turning on by themselves, which is rude because plumbing in Key West is already fighting for its life. But the most unsettling spirit, the little boy. Visitors have reported seeing a small child standing near the old gallows area. He vanishes, footsteps follow people into empty rooms, and sometimes you'll hear giggling when no kids are anywhere near. Nothing like hearing phantom children laugh while you're 3 margaritas deep, wondering if the lime did something to you. Employees also talk about shadow figures, doors opening and closing, phantom footsteps, and the overwhelming sense that you are never alone, even in the bathroom, which is not comforting when you're trying to have a private moment with your bad decisions. So when you step into Captain Tony's, just remember, You're drinking in a former morgue, execution yard, speakeasy, and ghost daycare. You might leave with a hangover, a karaoke video you regret, and possibly a 19th century spirit emotionally attached to you. Tip your bartender, and maybe whisper "excuse me" to the air, just in case. Thank you for watching Key West is Hiding Something. This island may look like nothing but sunshine, palm trees, and pastel houses. But as you've just seen, there's a whole other side hiding beneath the margaritas and sunsets. Every creaking floorboard, every shadow in an old hallway, every whispered story passed down through generations reminds us that Key West doesn't just have history, it has unfinished business. If you felt a chill, that's not the air conditioning. That's the island letting you know you were never alone while watching this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back for more true stories, haunted places, and secrets they don't put on the postcards. Because here in Key West, the sun goes down, but the spirits never sleep.